All right. So everyone, welcome to this session. This is session number one in the series of sessions on boosting your productivity and creativity while doing research. Uh, and my name is Ishan Puranik, and here we go. Can somebody confirm if they can see the screen?
Yeah, we can see it now.
Oh, thank you. So the title of this session is Research is an ugly word. Now, most of you are thinking that if this is a session about research, then why are we criticizing the word research itself? So the reason is simple, because the word is very vague. By definition, to research means to investigate something systematically and reach a new conclusion. Now, this definition does nothing for us. It doesn't tell us what investigation is, it doesn't tell us what systematic is. Even if you decide to choose sources that come from a particular country, that is also systematic because you're following a system. If you consider just looking through WhatsApp and finding relevant messages on a particular topic, that also counts as investigation, but it's not reliable. So, and finally, what is a new conclusion? Is a new conclusion new just because it's the first time that you thought of it, or is it new because nobody else has thought of it? What qualifies as new? So, all these things are purposely left undefined in the generic definition because this word can be used to cover multiple different fields and areas of research. So obviously, if you're working in a marketing team, the definition of your research will be extremely different from what a professor or a judge would research. That's why the word research is very vague. When you describe what you do, uh, you shouldn't describe it as I do research because that doesn't tell anybody, does not give anybody any idea about what you actually do. So before going forward, I would like to explain what type of research that I'll be explaining to you today, and that is academic writing. Academic writing, as defined by the author Sonke Arons in How to Take Smart Notes, which is a very good book on this topic. Uh, Academic writing is gaining insight and making it public. Now, gaining insight is basically just getting a new idea about something that you did not know earlier. Okay, and making it public means sharing it with a larger audience. Even if you share it with a group of 5 friends, that's also making it public. If you get it published in a journal, that's also making it public. The main focus that I'll be focusing on today is how to gain insight. So it's not complicated at all. It's a series of vanilla solutions. The first of which is to create, consume, and absorb more content. Now, content does not mean Riverdale. Content means anything that is related to the ideas that you're interested in. So, whether that's a YouTube video or whether that's a TV show or if it's a book or a journal article, anything that is related to your idea is called content. Now, consuming content literally means just looking at it, reading it, or just engaging it with it at a very primary level. You're not, you are just being exposed to it. That's what is meant to consume content. Now, the most important thing that while we do academic writing is to absorb the content that we see. Now, how do you absorb content? You absorb content by taking notes. This is the second vanilla solution of today. Now, I know what you're thinking. You don't take notes in class either. Why would you take it while reading something? So, the simple reason is that when you take a note, you learn, you engage more with the material that you are being exposed to. Now, imagine this situation in which you are writing an ICA paper for some subject and you find a journal article that covers 3 different subjects at once. So like, let's take the example of contract law, management, and marketing. You find a paper which deals with how a contract should be drafted, and it covers all 3 of these subjects. And you can use this same paper in all 3 of your projects. Now, what we usually do is when we find a journal article, we read the abstract and then we scroll through it to find anything that is relevant to what we want to write. We find that paragraph or line, we paste it into our work and then put a citation. So what this results in is that every time we want to refer to that article, we end up scrolling through the entire article and then just pasting a line for one citation. Instead of that, what if I told you that you can read it once and then use it for the rest of your life? imagine another situation in which you find a paper that looks like it's related to what you're thinking about. And for the first few, like, let's say first 10 or 15 pages, it is related to what you're thinking about. From the 16th page, we realize this is something else entirely. So for example, if you are working on a topic, let's say mediation and arbitration with the help of artificial intelligence, and you find and you find a journal article that is titled artificial intelligence in the dispute resolution process, right? And so, like, because we're law students, we read this, we probably think that they're talking about ADR, right? But turns out that it was actually about dispute resolution between two different apps that are sending conflicting data to each other. So how can AI be used to resolve those disputes? So imagine if you read 10 pages of this because it looked like it was relevant, and from the 11th page you realize that this is not what I wanted. So the time you spent reading those 10 pages is completely wasted, right? So if you had just taken notes, you could stop reading from the 11th page and you would still have enough material from that one paper to make sure that you can use it in the future. When you are coming back to why we need to take notes, is because when we're reading something and taking notes, we will be more receptive and will engage more with the material. If you have ever tried to take notes from a YouTube video, then you'll know what I'm talking about. Because when we take notes from a YouTube video, we're usually just writing down and then we pause it, we rewind it, we listen to what the person has said again, we write it down again, and this keeps happening. So that is literally us taking a conscious effort to make sure we understand what is being said. So when we take notes with any kind of material, be it a written material or a audio-visual material, or even just audio material, when we take notes, we engage with it better. So now that we know that we need to take notes, we also need to know how to take good notes. So if you've seen a lot of those memes, whenever you try to highlight something from a textbook, you highlight the entire textbook. So that is a problem. Everybody has faced that problem. I feel like that. So what do we need to highlight? What do we need to skip? What do we need to annotate? And what shouldn't we do? The answer to that is simple. That only the ideas that interest you or that can be used in your own material. Now, when I mean ideas, I mean anything that gives you some sort of new knowledge that you did not have before, or some sort of reinterpretation of some knowledge that you already had before. So as an example, let's take this paper, which is titled Value Articulation, a Framework for Strategic Management of Intellectual Property. Now, value articulation is basically a concept which allows taking the value that you get from a patent and transferring it to a trademark and using that for marketing activities. So these three ideas that I got from this paper are as follows: that a patent can be used to secure some technical benefit, and that technical benefit can be psychologically tied to a trademark, which prolongs the value of the patent indefinitely. Then intellectual property rights can be used to enter new fields or expand market share in existing fields and also steal customers from competitors. That's the second idea. Third idea was merchandising and franchising may be expensive, but if it's done properly, it will help the expansion of the brand's identity. As an example, I learned about Dolby. Dolby started making audio cassettes, and today they're one of the largest names in the audio production industry as a whole. So how they made that transition from analog audio to digital audio, that was done through value articulation and associated concepts like that. So these are the three ideas that I got from reading that paper. And when I engaged with these ideas, I played around with them, I thought about them. I got two more ideas of my own. So those were the insight that I gained from that article. The two ideas that I got were: can intellectual property rights, other than trademarks and brands, be used as effective marketing tools? And can a famous company use its fame to earn profit in an area that it isn't remotely connected to? And these two ideas became starting points on which I worked. I read more papers on this. I exposed myself to more content on this. I took more notes on this concept. And that led to me writing this paper, which is now published in a UGC journal. So when we're reading some piece of literature, it's important to keep in mind why we're reading it. When we were in school, we used to get the questions beforehand. You to read that material and find the answers. In college, and especially when we're doing research work, we are often looking for the questions itself. And you can't ask questions without knowing what we're talking about. So these three things, the ideas, learning about an idea, the question associated to the idea, and the answer to that question. All these three things, all these three, all of these three things are insights or ideas. And when we keep reading and keep exposing ourselves to new content, we will be able to gain a lot of new ideas and a lot of more insight. And if we make a library of this insight, then we will be able to develop these ideas further, write articles of these articles on these concepts, and more. You can also use this library that you will generate as something that will inform your decisions in the future about what you want to research about, where you want your research to end up, and things like that. It can also help you connect your research to other subjects. So like IPR is a subject in law, but marketing is a subject in management. So through the notes that I took, I was able to make that connection between these some solely marketing concepts and solely legal concepts. That's how I made that paper that I mentioned earlier. Now, you took a note, that's fine, but if you don't keep them all in one place, they end up turning into scattered thoughts. So if you have one set of notes in your computer and another set of notes in your notebook, then that's going to lead to a lot of stress. It's going to lead to a lot of anxiety because you have no idea where the relevant note is at the relevant time. So it's important to make sure that all your notes are at the same place. Finally, when we talk about content, not all content is the same, right? You'll find tons of different articles on the single concept, but not all of those articles are reliable. Not all of those articles are worth reading. So here's what you do. Whenever you find a concept that you want to study about, go to JSTOR. You find articles related to the concept over there. If you can't find any, then you go to Google Scholar. And if you still can't find any, then you go to Google search and find stuff from websites like ResearchGate or academia.edu and stuff like that. On the other hand, if you're doing research for something informal, like a blog post or an Instagram story or something like that, then don't start your research from these articles, start it from YouTube. Because on YouTube, you'll find a lot of people explaining concepts in a simple manner, and it will also help you understand the concept before you start reading about it. Because as we know, reading involves a lot more effort, a lot more energy, and a lot more attention as compared to watching a video. So use that to your benefit. Start from YouTube if you're doing something informal, and take notes from YouTube as well. So that is the end of the presentation. But what I'd like to talk about now is something that when I spoke about taking notes is not enough unless you don't find a way to connect them. So there was a sociologist named Charles Luhmann, and he used this note-taking system that I described today, and he was so productive that when he died, he had 30 different journal articles that were scheduled to be published. So he is more productive. He is a more productive researcher than a lot of researchers are while they're living. So he was able to use this note-taking system to create these 30 different articles after he died. So you can imagine how much he did when he worked. Now, the benefit of why we take notes, why we need to take notes, is because when we take notes and notes that are reliable, we can translate these notes directly into whole articles themselves. So as an example, imagine if you're studying the concept of intellectual property rights. Now, you make one note on what intellectual property rights are. You make one note on what trademarks are. You make one note on what copyrights are. And then on the third day, your teacher tells you to write an entire article on this. Now, instead of sitting down, starting your research from scratch and typing it out, all you have to do is organize these three notes in a well coherent manner, and you have an entire article that is ready. In a more, I'll show you how this works. Right. Can you see my screen, guys?
Yes.
Okay. Right. So this is one of my recent papers that I have been working on. And it's basically the topic is how we can use artificial intelligence in alternative dispute resolution like arbitration and mediation. So this is how it is. This is the workbench. Like this is the table of contents that I want to use for the paper. Now, you'll see I have the heading introduction and I have all these hyperlinks to different notes. So there is this thing called the Pound Conference. Now, the Pound Conference was basically a meeting between a lot of different judges, lawyers, and professors that became the pivotal moment in the ADR movement. This meeting consisted of a lot of people that believed that the traditional judicial system was causing a lot of delays and left a lot to be desired. So they wanted something new, and they came up with the idea of ADR. So I have one note about the Pound Conference. That's over here. And this is it. I just put this note over here and half of my introduction is done. Then I have these three different notes, which are basically three similar ideas. So we have this one, artificial intelligence and arbitration. And these are all notes. These are all notes that describe that idea. And I put it there. When I write the final paper, I edit it in a way that makes sure that it flows smoothly. And that makes it extremely easy to write a 500-word introduction within half an hour because all the material is already written. I just need to edit it. I'll see if I can show you this paper. Right. Now, you can also do this when you are trying to craft an argument for whatever you need to do. So like over here. So one of the arguments that I'm using to discourage artificial intelligence from being used in ADR is called the black box argument. Now, if you notice, I've written Kafka's The Trial here. Now, The Trial is a story by Franz Kafka, which is basically about a man that wakes up one day and finds out he's being arrested. And he has no idea why he's being arrested. And the officers that are arresting him don't know why he's being arrested either. So this situation is, it was originally written to represent how little control citizens have of their life even in a society that is governed by democracy. But this same situation can be used to describe the situation that we have with AI systems today. And basically, what a black box is that it's a machine and you don't know how that machine works. You can only look at the input and the output, but you don't know how the machine works internally. So that is how I linked Kafka's The Trial with this argument. And in the final paper, I was able to make a small introduction for the argument based on this. Similarly, if you see, each argument has a set of nodes that it's linked to. Like the biased argument, that AI is biased, is linked to this article called machine bias. So I can just take the notes that I've taken on this article and put it over here, edit it a bit to make sure that it flows coherently with the rest of the paper, and then my entire work is done. So this is a 10-page paper, and it has a lot of legal arguments and stuff like that. I wrote it within 3 days because I used the note system. The best part of this is that if you write your notes yourself, like if you don't copy and paste your notes from the source, then you have a huge library of unplagiarized notes that you can just take from one place into another. You have a whole article that is ready. So this is the entire structure of the article, and I've typed it out, and it's done. It's done. It's that simple. Similarly, if I wanted to do something informal, so I recently wrote a post about gamifying your life, which is basically a productivity system that is basically used to design your life and your tasks and your goals like a video game. So I wanted to search on this topic. So I started from YouTube. I found two videos about it. I watched both the videos and I have a whole 1500 page, 1500 word article on it now. And all I did was just watch two videos and take notes on it. I hope that convinced you about why you need to take notes. Now I'll show you something really cool. So this is a software that is called Obsidian. If you remember me mentioning Mr. Luhmann earlier, the productive, posthumously productive researcher, he developed this system called the Zettelkasten or the Slipbox. It's basically a system of linking notes together. And this app, it's called Obsidian. It's basically the modern adaptation of that system. So every single dot you see here is a note. And these larger notes, these larger dots, those are notes that have a ton of different notes linked to them. So let's say that I want to start writing an article on procrastination. I click here and it shows me every single note that is attached to this concept of procrastination. So over here, I have three different articles that are attached to it. Now, all I need to do, I click on it. It opens the file. I go back to the graph and I open this one too. So gamifying your life. Okay. So what can I say about procrastination from this article? Just search for procrastination. I find this. I copy it here. And I do this with all the other references that I have. Then I have a ton of notes in this. I organize it and I'm done. The article is finished. It's that easy. Now, the best way to implement this is to start feeding all your notes into this system. But I understand that may not be feasible for everyone. So the best way to do it is that from now onwards, whenever you read something or watch something that is that you are doing in order for your research, start taking notes from today. That way, the more you read and the more you are exposed to, the better your library becomes, the larger your library becomes, and the easier research will be in the future. And this also allows you to connect a lot of different concepts, like I said earlier. So I have a whole set of notes that are on marketing. And I just have to find one note that connects to some legal concept. And then I have a whole new article about the legality of this marketing concept. And that's done. It's that easy. So if you start taking good notes from today, you can turn the process of research from investigation into organization. And in a good way. It's not like you're cheating. And with that, I would like to take any questions, if any. No questions?
Hi, Shan. So, for your note-based system, how do you incorporate statistics?
So I personally don't work with statistics a lot, but there are, so like this app that I showed you, Obsidian, it has a huge community that creates plugins for different kind of workflows. So for statistics, you could use this as well. What I can think of right now is that if I come across a table of statistics that looks interesting to me, you can just take a screenshot and save it in a note, and I can describe the statistic in a few short words. So whenever when I'm dealing with something related to that, I can just find these statistics again and link it there. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. So, with regard to your methodology for legal research papers,
Right.
which require analysis of judgments, how do you go about that?
Right. So for judgments, what I usually do is that when I'm reading the judgment, I treat the judgment in the same way that I treat a research paper, and I take notes for those too. So if you'll see, I have this one judgment called Geeta Hariharan versus RBI, and I have a ton of notes on that as well. So you'll see that these are things that are directly taken out of the judgment, and these are my comments on it. So if you go down here, you'll see that this judgment basically dealt with the concept of which parent is a better guardian in the eyes of the law. And so in this judgment, the judges spoke about something called the welfare theory of the child. So I made a note about the welfare theory of child. Now, if I ever have to start writing a paper that deals with custody and things like that, you can refer to this note, and it's empty right now because I haven't written it. But I can go back to this judgment, I can find out what they said, and I can put it here. This also makes it much more easier for me to look at legal concepts and also pick them up and also find out in which context they were used. Because if you'll see, I have the facts of the case here as well. Another thing that I do for legal-based papers is that, so if you'll see here, I have a company law thing. I have a company law notes. And over here, I have a concept called the corporate wheel, which is linked to a bracket theory and two different cases that are related to this. So if I want to start writing an article in corporate wheel, I just have to open this and look at all the connected notes, and I can just bring in stuff from there. Similarly, if you have property law, so in property law, let me just find where that is. Right. So here I have property law. Now, in property law, there is something called doctrine of fixture. Now, the doctrine of fixture is in the English common law, but it isn't expressly in the Indian law on the same topic. Now, according to the doctrine of fixture in English law, there is a concept called chattel, and chattel does not exist in Indian law. We do have the concept of a chattel, but it's called movable property instead of chattel. So if I want to start writing a paper on the differences in Indian property law and English property law, I just have to find all the notes that are tagged English law, and I can just look at what they link to. And that makes it extremely easier to write stuff like that. So if you'll see, I have the property law map of content. That's what MOC means. This is just a set of notes that are all linked to property law concepts and cases. Any other questions? All right, so if there are no questions, we'll bring this meeting to an end. Thank you everyone for attending, and I hope whatever I spoke about today was some help to you. If you have any questions, feel free to text me on WhatsApp, and I'll reply to those as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.